This is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales. I know we've been on a little bit of hiatus for 2 weeks, so we're back again. We got an interesting guest today that talks about areas that I actually know about, or grew up in, rather. Today we have Mike Dineen, who put out a book recently called Suburban Gangsters, and I'm very interested in speaking with him. And please like, share, and most of all, subscribe and leave a couple of comments. That would be nice. So without further ado, Mike, thanks a lot for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Nick. Glad to be here.
So yeah, glad to have you as well. Just to let people know, Mike was involved in a lot of crazy shit back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, 90s, whatever, in that time period that I kind of grew up in. And a lot of places he mentioned that he was dealing with were places on Long Island, Huntington, Comac area, in that section, maybe even out of the skirts of the Long Island area. And he was heavy into drug dealing, and a little bit of everything, actually, kind of. And I have a lot of hard questions for him. So Mike, just give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what drove you to put the book out.
Well, it was the life itself. I knew I had a pretty good story to tell as far as that goes. I grew up out here in Huntington. I'm from New York City. I was born in the city. My parents moved out here when I was young. Grew up in Long Island, and it was when the cocaine. I played sports and everything growing up. I was actually a pretty good kid, I guess, for the most part. I did well in school and everything, but when the cocaine made its way into the suburbs and everything, into the mainstream in the early 80s, especially into the mid 80s, people started doing it, friends of mine and things like that. We saw what was happening, and we realized that we could make some money off of this. And I was got an opportunity. One weekend, some guy asked if we wanted to sell something for him. And he gave us a couple of just small packages. We flipped them very quick because we had a party at a friend of mine's house. And we thought that was like a lot of money, we had made. It was like nothing, but because we had never made anything that fast, and when we got into it, it just went off like a rocket ship, like overnight.
Yeah, pretty much. It's what I had the pleasure of reading the book, Suburban Gangsters, which was pretty interesting, to say the least. Even though, like I said, a lot of stuff that I was around that kind of stuff. And the questions I have basically about the book, and about you growing up into this world, because I was a little bit confused, to say the least. Because I grew up around wise guys. That's my background, and I knew a lot of guys that dealt in stuff like this to some degree. One guy you might even know. You didn't mention his name, but you might have come across him, maybe. His name was Hunter Adams. Hunter's father was a knockaround guy with the wise guys. His father's name was Stephen. And I knew them really well because we used to go to Channel 80, Patty McGee's, Malibu. You probably know everything I'm talking about.
Of course.
Rocks, in Island Park. So a lot of those places, a lot of the stuff you're talking about happened. You see girls in the bathroom where they're doing lines right on the freaking on the sinks.
It was everywhere back then. I mean, everybody was doing it back then.
Thank God I wasn't, but a lot of my friends weren't either. But a lot of people were. Yes, it was pretty popular. And what I found interesting is that how you were able to, from what I gathered from the book, you're absolutely brilliant, in my opinion. How you managed to maneuver through this whole, I think it was 8-9 years you were involved. And 8-9 years, and you never got pinched once, which is pretty.
No, it was longer than that. Even it was like before I actually had my personal fall. I think I was operating for about 15 years.
Well, that's a long time, and that's amazing how you were look, somebody who's going to read the book, right? Like myself, and would probably question, wait a minute, how did this guy survive without getting pinched once? But everybody around him was getting pinched. How that happened? And I'm really flabbergasted about how, because look, I'm being devil's advocate here. And because the regular schmuck the person's gonna say, nobody's that good. Somebody's gonna get pinched eventually. So like it's amazing to me how you were able to finagle your way through this without any major, let alone, yes, you were chased by other, gangs, other guys on the street trying to take over your business. You put a couple of guys down, I don't mean killing him, I mean beating him up, stuff like that. But you saying you came kind of out of it unscathed, sort of. So how did you do that?
Let me start by saying this. I was very lucky in a lot of instances. The one thing that separated me from some of the other people that were in that business and stuff that were around, I was pretty smart at being able to read the playing field in front of me. I could see things that were lining up, things that were starting to go bad. I was thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead. A lot of these people weren't, but that's not the only reason why. Like I got lucky quite a few times, very lucky.
You're not kidding.
And believe me, I was very close to getting my number punched a few times, but that's why eventually it led me to actually joining forces with the law because they had pinched my partner,
Good.
and so they started following me everywhere after that. And I said, you know what? I got to think this through. I actually took some time off, but then my partner's brother ran into a detective at some house he was at, and the guy had said something to my friend's brother. He said, "Oh, I want to take down this guy, whatever, blah blah blah." And my friend's brother says, "I can't help you. If you want to do that, you're gonna have to talk to Mike." And the cop was like, "Oh, really?" He was pissed because he had tried to bust me supposedly a bunch of times. Was sitting around my house, pulling people over and stuff like that, and he couldn't get anybody. They got people, but they never rolled on me though. So I guess I was a little bit lucky with that. But I saw what was coming, the coming storm, because something really big had just gone on, and the feds were involved and everything. So I said, you know what? My friend said to him, I'll talk to Mike for you and see if he says something. If he says he'll talk to you. And I said to myself, I met with the cop one day, and he asked me a couple questions and stuff, and he actually turned out to be a pretty cool guy, believe it or not. And he gave me an opportunity, and he said, would you do something for me? And I asked him, and he's like, yeah, you wanted to set this one guy up. Now, I said to myself, now, this is where all these things started spinning in my head. I said, wait a second, this could be a great thing for me. I can go back and deal now, and you know what? I'll let these guys watch my back, basically, the cops and feds, and start doing what I was doing. And I ended up working for them for 2 years. And it prevented my own, because they was closing in on me at that point. So I made a preemptive strike against my own demise, we'll put it that way.
Wow, yeah, that is I mean, I remember that with Ira Kilstein. And that was a very interesting way you got around that, which is sort of like what I know it's a bigger fish, but it's sort of like what Whitey Bulger did with the Italians in Boston, where he did whatever the hell he wanted to do as long as he brought down the North End, which is basically what happened. So you kind of did similar kind of a theory. I mean, you weren't nowhere the level of Whitey Bulger, but it's the same theory. You were protecting yourself. You figured, like Whitey said, look, these guys are going to protect me. I'll do whatever the heck I want to do, make my money. They take down the bigger fish, or sort of the bigger fish, if that makes them happy, and they leave me the hell alone, which is basically kind of what you did.
That's exactly what we did. I didn't even know about Whitey Bulger yet when this thing was going on. We were only in our early 20s. Whitey Bulger was an older man. We put this thing together like we were thinking a lot quicker than most other people were, because it was a game. It wasn't even a game. It was all about survival. You know what I'm saying? Like If you end up going to prison, you lose. If you lose all your money, you lose. So I had to come up with a way to try and stay in this game and give myself, some outs in case something did end up happening. So I ended up working with them, and they ended up actually watching over our backs while this whole thing was going on.
Wow, that is crazy. Well, based on that fact, and based on based on the book, I'm following that as my template, basically. So, because usually in that world, whether you're in a mob guy, whether you're a street guy, drug dealer, whatever, it doesn't matter. In that criminal world, when somebody like yourself, goes through all this and, never gets caught up, never gets jammed up. Normally, guys around you are going to start questioning this. Say, wait a minute, this guy's Ray got pinched. This guy, Ira got pinched. This guy got pinched. Jake went on the lam. Why is Mike still walking around? Weren't you? Because usually they're going to say, wait a minute, maybe this guy's a snitch. So you almost kind of put an X on your back, kind of basically.
Believe it or not, that was the last thing I was worried about. I didn't worry about anybody. If it got out there or whatever, and someone had a problem, then let them come deal with it with me. You know what I'm saying? I don't take anything from anybody. You know what I'm saying? But we kept it very low key for the most part. And we had everything locked down around here. So everybody that was involved in that business was coming to us, for everything basically in our small part that we had. So I really wasn't worried about it too much. There was a couple of my friends that knew, but they weren't out there telling anybody about it at the time.
Yeah, Mike's talking about, maybe we should change your name to Mike Lucky.
Believe me, I got grabbed one time. Not grabbed, but I was summoned to a meeting after I had just picked up. I had about 300 pounds of weed on me in the trunk of my car. And I get a beep with a 911 telling me to go to this spot in Huntington off of Route 110, where I used to meet the Drug Enforcement Administration and the cops and stuff. And he's like, you got to come right now. And I was coming back. I'd pull over to the Round Swamp Road payphone. It's right on the Northern State Parkway. And I said, do I have to go? And the guy's like, yeah. I'm like, ah, shit. So I go there, I show up. I thought I was just meeting with the cop, and the drug enforcement agent was there. And he was steaming, man. I didn't know what was going on, but I could see the look on his face. He was extremely unhappy about something. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, this car is loaded down, because I was working voluntarily for them. They would have loved to have gotten something on me to hang over my head and try and force me into something. You know what I mean? And it would have changed the dynamics completely. So I was very nervous when I pulled up that day. And the cop, actually, the DEA agent, was looking to set up one of the guys that I was getting my weed from. He actually offered me money to set the guy up. And I actually turned him down. I said, no. I mean, even though we were doing what we were doing, there are certain people that I was friends with, that I was solid with, that I would never do that kind of thing to. I had, when it came to that, there were some people I would never screw over, no matter what. And it's not because of fear or anything. It's just because if someone does the right thing by me, I'm never going to do something like that to them. No way. So I roll in there, and he sits on the hood back, the trunk of my car. This thing is filled with weed, and I could smell it. And he's looking around, and I almost passed out. I was starting to get an anxiety attack. I was like, oh, saying to myself, oh no, please don't find or smell this stuff. And after a couple minutes went by, he jumped off the car, and that was it. And it was a very close call. I wasn't too happy about it.
Well, yeah, I would say. But I guess so. I'm guessing, and I'm probably right. I think that the Ira Kilstein thing was more of a personal. It was more personal.
That was all payback.
Yeah, payback. It was more personal than business.
That's all it was. Me and my training partner were like blood brothers. We trained in the martial arts together for years. We were best friends, and we had big plans doing something really big with our karate instructor, Richie Barathi, at the time. And Kilstein threw a wrench into that. Kilstein ended up getting robbed, right? But it was because of something he did. He tried to screw these guys over, this robbery crew, over for some money and stuff. And he basically brought it on himself. So they went back and robbed him. And as soon as it happened, because they ended up handcuffing the family together in the house and everything, and walking out the safe and all stuff. And so the FBI shows up. And this was prior to me working with anybody and stuff. And Kilstein ratted out everybody. I mean, he threw everybody under the bus. That's why I started getting fouled all over the place. I shut everything down for a while, but my training partner, who I call Jake in the book, he couldn't stop. Like, I was trying to explain to him, like, look, this is not good right now. I'm seeing signs everywhere that you have to listen to me. Take some time off. Take 6 months off. It's not going to kill you. But he couldn't do it, and he ended up getting busted because basically this guy sent them in his direction. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened? You know, had he not done that.
Well, then he went on the lam and he disappeared to California.
They booted his door Super Bowl Sunday when the Giants were playing the Bills. But he was in Atlantic City with somebody else we knew who went to, who was part of that robbery crew. And when they booted the door, nobody was home. But there was stuff in the house. I mean, they got like a kilo of coke, and they got a bunch of guns, and, you know, I don't know how much money was in there, a lot of money, and pills and other stuff. But nobody was home. His girlfriend, however, drove by the house that night and saw what was going on. So she went to a friend of mine around the corner's house in Deer Park where this stuff was happening. And he drove her to my house. But right before that, they did that, though. They beeped Jake in Atlantic City. And when he called them, they said, look, the house just went down. There's cops all over the place. You know, they're all over the property. We're looking at him right now from the other house's window. And he knew he was done at that point. So.
Right. Well, yeah. So that's when he took off, obviously.
Yes, he took off, went straight to North Carolina. In the book, I said Georgia, but it was North Carolina he went to.
Okay. Is he still alive right now or no?
He's still alive. He got caught in 2001 on the lam after he was on the lam 10 years. And they caught him, and he ended up doing like 5. I don't know what the sentence was, 5 to 15, something like that. And he did 5, and then he was out, and he never went back to a life of crime. He was done after that.
Oh, but he obviously kept his mouth shut. Obviously.
Oh, he did. They offered him. They were asking him. They wanted him to roll on the robbery crew and stuff, but he wasn't like that. He would have never done that. You know, he was a stand-up guy, and you know, maybe somebody else he might have, but the people they were asking to do it to, no. We were friends with some of those guys. You know, we knew some of them really well, and he was never going to do that to them.
Wow. Okay.
The cop asked me when I started working for him if we wanted to make a deal for my friend so he could bring back, you know, cut his time down or whatever. And I went to visit him in California in '91, I think it was, and I told him about that. He knew already that I was working with the cops and feds and everything. I said, look, they're going to, you want them to help you. I could set this up and everything, but you got to turn yourself in. He had just had a brand new baby with his wife, so he's like, I can't do it now.
Wow. Okay. Based on what, the other thing that really got me interested is the unfortunate, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Don't take me wrong, but it was also kind of strange how you discussed how Vanessa was, got too deep into drugs and this and that, and she didn't know how to cut the habit. But in the meantime, you were angry with her about that, and even after she had the baby, because you had a child with her, right? A daughter.
Yes, at that time, even though I got high once in a while myself, I was very against her doing anything. Like when we first started going together, we met because she came over to buy some cocaine or something. That's how it started. But immediately after, I wanted to put a stop to that because I did not like seeing her high. I really wasn't into it. I was working out a lot at the time and stuff, and I really didn't do any drugs at that time in my life. And it was bothering me seeing her in that condition. And what I did is I started shutting down anybody who sold anything to her, got a savage beating. And so she had nowhere to go after a while.
Well, see people on the outside looking in, I'm gonna say, wait a minute, this guy's trying to stop this girl from doing drugs. Meantime, he's selling it. So
it may seem hypocritical in a sense. Yeah, obviously, But let me tell you something, man. It's a weird life when you're living like that. I mean, what's okay and what's not okay. It's a very interesting thing. But I was more about being good to her parents, and I didn't want to see anything happen to her.
Well, and so what happened? What was towards the end of the book? We didn't really get a clear understanding of what actually happened to her. Like what
Well,
was the end game on with her?
it was very sad. Me and her split around, I think it was around 98, 99. And she went off the deep end because she couldn't stop with the drugs and stuff. She had gotten arrested. I wrote about it in the book in Nassau County. I told
Yeah,
her she
you
was
mentioned
being
that
held
stuff.
on 7 felonies. They wanted to give her 15 years at first. And I hired one lawyer for like 10 grand. The guy couldn't even get a bail reduction. They wanted $250,000 for a bail. You can't walk in with $250,000 in cash in a suitcase. Say, here you go, guys. So what I did is I called up a lawyer that I knew well, and I asked him. I said, "Who you got? Who's really good with this?" And he says, "All right, I'm going to hook you up with someone really good because I'm actually at the Yankees game with him right now." And he put me on the phone with him. I said, "Listen," I said, "could you do something with this?" I explained to him the charges and everything, and he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Bring me. I'm not going to say the amount of money. Bring a duffel bag over to my office tomorrow, whatever." He goes, "I'll have her out by the next day," something like that. So I went in there and I threw a chunk of cash on him, and he had the first bail hearing. Boom, he got her out. They dropped it to like 10,000, and I got her out right there.
Wow.
But she never after that recovered. She went like kept running. She ended up going to prison a bunch of times, and she in like 2015 she robbed a bank,
You're kidding.
and she robbed the bank,
Oh
and she
shit.
got caught, and she got locked up. They gave her like 3 years or something. When she came home, she died of an overdose about 6 months later.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
It was sad because I did everything humanly possible. And look, and I know for a long time I was consider me a low life, whatever you want with what I was doing. Okay. But I did do everything humanly possible to try and get her to stop and get her help and all that stuff, but it never took.
Right. So I mean, I'm just wondering what her perception. In other words, I'm taking this from the movie Scarface, which I'm sure you've seen,
Of
where
course.
Pacino tells her something like says, "Oh, you do so much drugs. How can I have a baby with you? Your body's all polluted." And then she turns around and says, "Who are you to talk?" So I'm imagining she probably gave you the same, hit you with the same thing, probably.
There were a lot of similar parallels in that and some of the real life things that were going on, no doubt.
Yeah, I can imagine. Um, but now with your parents, because I know your parents, were good people. They were hardworking people, and it's I couldn't imagine how your father, living in the same house with you, with all this going on. I can't even picture that. To let
You know,
alone.
he grew up in a time where like a lot of people weren't, at least in his neighborhood, weren't doing drugs and stuff. And he got into the fire. He was in the army, right out of high school and everything, a couple of years, and then he, got on the fire department. And he was a straight shooter, so he never even understood any of that. He didn't know the signs to look for. It told the time I pulled up in a brand new car about 3 weeks after I asked him to co-sign a loan for me so I can get one. But I mean, I put them in jeopardy, man. I feel terrible about that years ago, what I did and stuff. Like, there's one night the feds they busted Kilstein the first time in like 87. And I was at his house, unfortunately, the day he made the sale, like a month before. So I'm coming home one night and I see this 4 or 5 trucks that were at Kilstein's house in front of my house. I was I was like, oh God, I got kilos under my bed. And my father's upstairs in the shower. So I went around the corner. I had to get a friend of mine. This guy lives around the corner who's in the book also. I gave him my keys. I said, listen, I was in a rent-a-car. They must have thought I was home because my car was in the driveway. I thought they were going to boot my door, either that or arrest me if I came out. So I said, go up to my front door, act like you're going to call for me. I said, put the key in the door, run upstairs, grab the Coke, and flush it immediately. He's like, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it. This guy walks past all those feds. They didn't bother him. I guess maybe they were looking to see if I came out. He runs inside. I told him to flush it right away. He does not flush it. He grabs the bag, goes out the back door, hops the fence, and goes to his house and kept it. I don't know what happened with it after that.
Oh, really? Maybe he sold it himself. That's crazy. No, forget it. That sounds nuts. Well, in since that time, since you went out of the business, you got out of everything, and many years ago. Since then, have you ever thought about maybe, I'm not sure, maybe you do it now already, I don't know. Maybe you go and talk to kids about this, getting off this kind of stuff, don't go anywhere near it, things of that nature.
Absolutely. I tell people this all the time. I'm on Twitter talking about it. People that know me on some of the social media sites. I've seen a lot over the years. I've seen this thing from every angle, from a lot of different angles, and the reality of it. And what I'd like to do, I'm trying to bring my book and overall story of everyone to a series and use that exposure to try and start a foundation and help people in crisis. And not only do that, but I would like to talk to young people and try and, even if you save one kid out of all your effort, I mean, it's even worth it if you save one life, but they got to know what's out there. They got to be told what the realities of these things, what's going on out there. Because in that world, it is not like you see in the movies a lot of times. It is ugly, and there's a lot of bad things going on. And most people don't usually survive when they get involved in these things. Either they die or they go to prison or their life is shattered. One way or the other, it doesn't end pretty for most people.
Right. Well, especially now, like I know cocaine was bad, heroin was bad, but this whole thing now with fentanyl is even worse. Um, I'm sure you're aware of that currently. In reference to what you went through, I think fentanyl was even worse.
Fentanyl, fentanyl is worse. The first time I ever heard about it was like 1991 or 89, 89, 90, when there was a brand out of heroin called Tango and Cash up in the Bronx. It was, and people were dying like crazy up there. And the police were going around with loudspeakers and stuff, telling everyone in the neighborhood, stay away from it. It's killing everybody. It was the first stuff that I had ever heard that was spiked with fentanyl. And when I had my run on the dope, when I became a junkie, thank God there wasn't much of that stuff around, the fentanyl, when I was doing it, because I would have easily died with how reckless I was using.
Right. Well, that's another thing that people would probably ask reading the book, because I was, because the reason why I'm saying is because my son, he's a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. Okay?
Right.
I know when you're in this kind of, when you're taking an art like the martial arts, it's a very dedicated, disciplined type of sport where your body is like a temple. You got to take care of it. So here you were with Jake, and not only doing roids, but you guys were doing all kinds of shit. And I was reading, I said, how the hell were they able to do martial arts and not fall flat on their face? I was like stunned. How you guys, how did you do it? I don't know.
I'll tell you what, our mentor, or the guy that trained us, the best guy that trained us, that guy, Richie Baratheon, that guy was one of the best martial artists probably to walk the planet. The guy was that good. He was a child of the 60s. He was I guess a teenager, late teenager in the 60s, mid to late 60s. And so his motto, they were all doing drugs and stuff, and his motto was better living through chemistry. So they came out with that mindset. So we were actually at times training, getting high while training. He says, look, Mike, you get high and stuff. He goes, you have to learn how to protect yourself and do this stuff while you're high. In case you're ever high out there, you better know what you're doing, what it's like to feel like it while you're on it, to be able to go after somebody and do these type of things. So we actually trained high, with semi-drunk at times, and we did a lot of different stuff like that, just so we could know what it's like to do it if we have to do it when we're under those conditions.
Well, I mean, don't you think that's kind of an, lack of a better term, a kind of an oxymoron in the sense?
It is.
Is it here's a teacher who, like my son's master, would never tell his kids, oh, let's do some of this and whatever. It was like I was just shocked reading this, saying how the master wasn't telling you guys got to stop doing this. No good for you. Your martial arts is nothing to do with this kind of world. You got to separate the two or whatever. But he was almost like, yeah, it's okay, let's do it. I was
What's funny is American Combat Karate, the system we trained in, was like a cult. I mean, it was out there. The people who went there and trained there and stuff. Let me tell you something. Even though a lot of the people were doing drugs and stuff like that there, these people trained like animals and trained for real. This was no five and dime karate school that a lot of things are out there that you see. You know, this was the real deal. And once I saw that, that didn't bother me at all.
Right. See, this is what this way we don't go any too longer, because I know you have your father you got to take care of. If people are interested to find out more about this book, to be able to get your Suburban Gangsters, where would they go? Is there a website? Is there anywhere they can find it?
You can buy it on Amazon, and
Okay.
you can buy it both through Barnes and Noble and I think Target and some of those stores you can order it from too. It's all in stock on their websites and stuff where you can order from those places too. And or if you got any questions, you can look me up on Twitter or Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Michael Dineen 58.
Okay. Well, have you done any planned book signings or anything coming up at all?
I haven't pursued that as much as I've been pursuing people in the business to try and get this thing off the ground and get it done a series, because I left a lot of stuff out of the book. I was a first-time writer when I did this. I'm not like you. I'm not like a seasoned writer. You know what I mean? Like, you're a real writer. I'm kind of someone that kind of is finding his way in the beginning through it. But oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. I'm burned right now. But what did I just say again? I forgot what I was just telling you.
What about the book signing? About you taking?
Oh, the book signing. Yeah, I was more interested in getting contacts so I can get this out there to try and get this series done. That was my main focus from the beginning, to bring that out there, and hopefully I'll be able to take that as a stepping stone and do a lot of good things with it.
Right, or like a script, like a movie or script or TV or something to that degree. I got you.
Well, I want to do the series, but I want to use that as a stepping stone to develop a foundation to where I can actually go out there and make some tangible differences in the world, not just talk about this and that. Actually see it, you know, helping people that are better in their lives and helping them to better their lives and be productive and get out of the situations they're in.
That's good. It's a good idea. Yes, that's great. All right. Well, listen, I'm more than a pleasure having you on the show, Mike. It was very interesting. You answered a couple of my questions.